lock your doors. But it won't help tonight. 8 chilling tales unravel the terror of break-ins that aren't human. From a farmer's lonely house invaded by starborn shadows to a clockmaker's shop where time itself betrays, these stories reveal horrors that slip through cracks in reality, stealing souls, memories, and hope. Each twist pulls you deeper into a cosmic nightmare where no home is safe. Dare to watch, but beware, these intruders might already be watching you. Story 1. The Whispering Shadows from Beyond. In a small town nestled between dark hills and endless woods, lived a man named Jack. He was a simple farmer, with rough hands from years of tilling soil, and a heart heavy from losing his wife to sickness. Long ago, his house stood alone on the edge of the forest, an old wooden place with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the wind. One night, as stars blinked coldly above, Jack felt a strange pull, like the air itself was alive and watching. He had heard tales from old folks about break-ins that weren't from thieves, but from something else, shadows that slipped through cracks, whispering secrets from stars far away. Jack laughed at such stories during the day, but at night, when the moon hid behind clouds, doubt crept in. That evening, he bolted the doors tight, checked the locks twice, and sat by the fire, with his dog, Rusty, at his feet. Rusty was a loyal mutt, with fur as black as night and eyes that saw more than most. As the clock ticked past midnight, a soft scratch came from the back door. Jack froze, his pipe halfway to his lips. Rusty growled low, hackles up. "Just the wind," Jack muttered, but his voice shook. He grabbed his lantern and walked to the door, peering through the small glass pane. Nothing but darkness outside, trees swaying like fingers reaching out. Then, the handle turned slowly, as if testing. Jack's heart pounded. He hadn't heard footsteps approach. With a deep breath, he yanked the door open, lantern high. Empty porch, cold air rushing in. But as he stepped back, something brushed his anklet chill, like icy breath. Rusty barked, wildly, backing away. Shutting the door fast, Jack barred it with a chair. "Must be my mind playing tricks," he said aloud, trying to calm himself. He returned to his chair, but the fire seemed dimmer, shadows longer on the walls. Whispers started then, faint at first, like wind through leaves, but words formed. "We see you, ... From the void, ... Jack spun around. The room was empty. Rusty wind, tail between legs. The whispers grew, coming from the walls, the floor, everywhere. They spoke of ancient things, stars that ate worlds, beings that traveled on light beams, breaking into homes not for gold, but for souls. Jack covered his ears, but the voices slipped inside his head. Panic rising, he ran to the bedroom, slamming the door. The house groaned, as if alive. Through the window, he saw shapes in the yard, tall, thin figures, not human, with limbs like twisted branches and eyes glowing like distant stars. They didn't walk, they glided, melting into shadows. One figure reached the window, its face a swirl of darkness, mouth opening wide. "Join us," it hissed, voice echoing in Jack's mind. Glass cracked under invisible pressure. Jack grabbed his shotgun from under the bed, hands shaking. He fired through the pane, shatter echoing loud. The figure vanished, but others appeared at doors and windows. Bolts rattled, wood splintered. Jack reloaded, backing into a corner. Rusty snarled, biting at air. The whispers turned to screams, telling of cosmic horrors, planets crumbling, gods older than time breaking into reality like burglars in the night. Door burst open, shadows flooding in. They wrapped around Rusty first, dog yelping as he faded into black mist. Jack shot again, but bullets passed through. Cold tendrils grabbed his legs, pulling him down. He fought, screaming, but the void swallowed his cries. As dawn broke, the house stood silent. Neighbors found it empty, doors locked from inside, no sign of struggle except shattered glass. Jack was gone, Rusty too. Whispers lingered in the wind, warning of break-ins from beyond, where stars hunger for the living. But that was just the start. In the days after, more homes in town felt the pull. Lights flickered, doors creaked open on their own. People spoke of dreams where vast, empty spaces called their names, promising secrets but delivering terror. One woman, old Mrs. Hale, woke to find her attic door ajar. Footsteps echoing from above, footsteps that sounded like echoes from a million miles away. She climbed the stairs, candle in hand, heart racing. The attic was dusty, filled with boxes of forgotten things. But in the corner, a shape shifted, a portal, like a tear in the air, swirling with colors not of this world. From it came hands, pale and long, reaching out. "We break in to show you truth," a voice boomed, deep and ancient. Mrs. Hale dropped the candle, fire spreading slow. She ran, but the hands grabbed her shawl, pulling. She tore free, tumbling downstairs. Fire consumed the house, but the portal remained, whispers escaping into night. Townfolk gathered, fear spreading like wildfire. The sheriff, a sturdy man named Tom, laughed it off at first. "Just tall tales," he said. But that night, in his own home, a knock came soft, insistent. He opened the door to nothing, but felt eyes upon him. Inside, his mirror cracked, reflection showing not his face but a void, stars swirling. Something stepped through the glass, breaking in from another realm. Tall, cloaked in shadow, it touched Tom's shoulder. Cold surged through him, visions of endless space, where beings floated, hungry for warmth of life. Tom fought, smashing the mirror, but shards flew, each holding a piece of the horror. He fled to the street, screaming. Neighbors watched as shadows dragged him back inside, door slamming shut. By morning, Tom's house was empty, like Jack's. The town whispered of cosmic thieves, stealing not goods but essence, breaking walls between worlds. Young Sarah, a girl of 12, heard the tales and hid under her bed that night. But whispers found her, telling of Gothic spires in the stars, castles built of bone where horrors dwelled. Her window fogged, fingers tracing words. "We come," she screamed for her parents, but they were already gone, shadows wrapping the house. Sarah ran to the basement, locking herself in, but cracks in walls let them seep through, cold and relentless, in the dark. She felt them, beings from Gothic nightmares, with capes of night and eyes like rubies. They spoke of eternal torment, breaking into minds like homes. Sarah's cries faded as dawn came. Her house joined the empty ones. The town emptied slow, people fleeing, but some stayed, drawn by the whisper's promise of knowledge. Elder Mr. Gray, a book lover, invited them in one night. "Show me," he said to the dark. Shadows poured through windows, doors untouched. They showed him visions, cosmic libraries of horror, books bound in skin, pages whispering Gothic tales of doom. But the price was high. Mr. Gray vanished, his books left open to blank pages, as if stories were stolen. A family of 4 tried to fight. They boarded windows, lit every lamp. But break-ins came from within, shadows rising from floors, whispering family secrets twisted into nightmares. Father shot at them, mother prayed, children hid. But one by one, they were pulled into the void, screams echoing. Last was the priest, Father Luke. He blessed homes, but in his church, stained glass shattered. Figures emerged, cosmic and Gothic blended, wings of bat, bodies of stardust. "We break all barriers," they said. Father Luke held his cross, but it melted in his hand. Darkness swallowed him. The town became a ghost place, houses standing with doors locked, but empty inside. Whispers remained, waiting for new victims. Years later, travelers came, hearing rumors. One, a curious writer, stayed in Jack's old house. That night, scratches at the door. He opened it, foolishly. Shadows rushed in, showing him the truth break-ins from Cosmos. Gothic horrors in every shadow. He wrote it down before vanishing. Words warning, they come not for what you have, but for what you are. And so the cycle continued, disturbing and true, in the quiet towns where night falls heavy. Story 2, The Manor of Eternal Night in the heart of the mist-shrouded moors, where the wind howled like a grieving widow, and the earth seemed to breathe with secrets, stood Blackthorn Manor. Its jagged towers pierced the gray sky like the bones of some ancient beast, and its stone walls, weathered by centuries, whispered tales of sorrow to anyone who dared listen. Lady Alina Blackthorn, the last of her line, lived alone in this Gothic pile, a solitary figure cloaked in mourning black, since her husband, Lord Victor, vanished under mysterious circumstances a year ago. The villagers below spoke in hushed tones of curses, of break-ins, not by thieves, but by spirits ghosts of old lords, restless and vengeful, seeking to reclaim what was theirs. Alina, a woman of sharp mind and unyielding will, dismissed such tales as peasant nonsense. She was 40, with raven hair streaked with silver, and eyes that held both grief and defiance. Her days were spent tending the manor's library, filled with dusty tomes of forbidden knowledge, and her nights by a roaring fire, reading of ancient rites and forgotten gods. The manor was her fortress, its creaking halls and shadowed corners, her only companions. Yet, even she could not ignore the chill that settled over the house when the moon hid behind clouds, nor the way the portraits of her ancestors seemed to watch her with accusing eyes. One stormy night, as thunder shook the heavens and rain lashed the leaded windows, Alina sat in the grand hall, a single candle casting flickering shadows across the high ceiling. The fire crackled, but its warmth did little to ease the cold knot in her chest. She was reading a book, bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed with age, when a crash echoed from the entrance hall, like glass shattering under a heavy blow. Her heart leaped, but she steadied herself, setting the book down with care. "Who's there?" she called, her voice firm, cutting through the storm's din. No answer came, only the wail of wind through unseen cracks. Alina rose, her long dress rustling, and took the candle, its flame dancing wildly. The manor was vast, with corridors, twisting like a labyrinth, but she knew every inch. She moved toward the entrance hall, her shadow stretching long and thin behind her. The air grew colder with each step, as if the storm had breached the walls. At the grand oak door, bolted with iron, she paused. It stood firm, untouched, but a window nearby, tall and arched, lay in ruins, glass shards glittering on the marble floor like fallen stars. Wind howled through the jagged hole, carrying a scent not of rain but of decay, like an open grave. Alina's breath caught. She held the candle higher, its light revealing nothing but the empty hall. Yet, the air felt heavy, as if eyes watched from the dark. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging across the floor. Not the tread of a man, but something heavier, unnatural, like stone grinding against stone. "Show yourself," she demanded, her voice echoing off the walls. The footsteps stopped, but a shadow moved at the edge of her vision, tall and cloaked, slipping into the corridor leading to the west wing. She followed, heart pounding but resolve unbroken. The west wing was forbidden, sealed since Victor's disappearance. He had been obsessed with it, spending nights in its locked rooms, muttering about voices from beyond. Alina had never entered, respecting his secrets even in death. Now, the door to the wing stood ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning. She pushed it open, hinges groaning like a dying breath. Inside, the air was thick, stale, smelling of mold and something metallic blood. Perhaps. The corridor stretched endlessly, lined with portraits of Blackthorn lords, their painted eyes glinting in the candlelight. At the far end, a figure stood, cloaked in tattered robes, its face hidden beneath a hood. "This house is mine," it rasped, voice like gravel scraped across bone. Alina froze, the candle trembling in her grip. "Who are you?" she demanded. The figure stepped forward, and the floorboards creaked, though no weight seemed to press them. "I am the first," it said, "and the last. This manor belongs to the eternal night." Elena's mind raced. The first Blackthorn, Lord Alaric, had built the manor centuries ago, rumored to have made a pact with dark forces to ensure his family's power. Was this him, or something worse, wearing his form? She backed away, but the figure glided closer, its robes trailing like smoke. "You cannot keep us out," it whispered. "We break in, as we always have." She turned and ran, her candle snuffed out by a sudden gust. Darkness swallowed her, but she knew the way to her chambers. She reached the door, slamming it shut, and sliding the bolt. Her breath came in gasps as she lit another candle, its weak light revealing her room bed desk, and the heavy armoire where she kept a silver dagger, a gift from Victor. She grabbed it, the blade cold against her palm. Knocks came then, soft but insistent, like a heartbeat against the wood. "Alina," the voice called, low and familiar, Victor's voice. Her blood ran cold. "You're dead," she whispered, clutching the dagger. The knocks grew louder, wood splintering. She backed to the window, rain streaking the glass. The door burst open, and there he stood, not Victor, but a mockery of him. His skin was pale as moonlight, his eyes empty sockets leaking shadow. "You left me?" he hissed, voice layered with others, ancient and cruel. "You let me fall to them." Alina swung the dagger, but it passed through him like air. He laughed, a sound that echoed with the cries of countless others. More figures appeared behind him, emerging from the walls. Their forms shifting lords and ladies of Blackthorn lineage, their faces twisted into Gothic nightmares. Some had horns curling from skulls, others claws dripping black ichor. "We are the eternal," they chanted, voices blending into a chorus of despair. "We break through time, through stone, through flesh." She stumbled back, the window shattering behind her. Cold rain soaked her dress, but she felt something else, a presence, vast and cosmic, pressing against reality itself. The figures advanced, their hands reaching, not for her body, but her mind. Visions flooded her, stars burning cold in a void. Spires of bone rising from seas of ash, and a throne where a shadowed king sat, his crown made of screams. "Join us," they whispered, "or be consumed." Elena's scream tore through the night, but the manor swallowed it. She slashed again, dagger useless against the spectral tide. They drove her down the grand staircase, toward the crypt below the manor, a place she'd never entered, where Blackthorn dead were said to rest in uneasy slumber. The air grew colder, the walls pulsing with a heartbeat not her own. The crypt door, carved with runes, swung open without touch. Inside, the darkness was alive. Tombs lined the walls, their lids cracked, shadows spilling out like ink. At the center stood an altar, black and slick, glowing with faint, unnatural light. Victor's form loomed there, his empty eyes fixed on her. "You were meant to join me," he said, voice now a chorus of thousands. "The pact demands it." Elena's mind reeled. She remembered Victor's late-night ravings, his obsession with a book he'd found in the West Wing, a tome of cosmic rites, promising power, at a terrible cost. Had he opened a door to this? Had he invited these horrors? The figures closed in, their touch like ice, burning her skin. She fell to her knees before the altar, dagger clattering away. But Alina was not one to surrender. She forced herself up, eyes blazing. "This is my house," she spat, voice shaking but strong. "You will not have it." She grabbed the altar's edge, its surface searing her hands, and pushed with all her strength. It toppled, crashing to the stone floor, the light within it flaring, then fading. The figures screamed, a sound that shook the crypt's walls. Cracks spread, dust raining down. The shadows recoiled, but one remained victor, or what wore his face. "You cannot stop the eternal," it said, lunging. Alina dove for the dagger, driving it into the figure's chest. It howled, dissolving into mist, but the crypt trembled, stones falling. She ran, the manor collapsing around her. Corridors twisted, walls bled shadow. Portraits burned, their eyes weeping black. She reached the entrance hall as the roof groaned, timbers snapping. The front door was still bolted, but she threw it open, rain and wind rushing in. Behind her, the manor roared, a sound like a beast in pain. Alina stumbled into the moors, falling to her knees in the mud. She looked back to see Blackthorn Manor crumble, towers falling into dust, swallowed by the earth. But as the storm raged, she heard whispers in the wind, soft, insidious, promising return. "We break in always," they said, fading into the night. Days later, villagers found the ruins, empty, but for a single book. Its pages blank, except for one word, scratched in blood: eternal. Alina was gone, her fate unknown. Some said she fled to another land, others that the shadows took her. But on stormy nights, when the moors grew silent, travelers swore they saw a figure in black, standing where the manor once stood, her dagger gleaming under a moonless sky. The manor's curse lived on, whispered in tales of break-ins, not by men but by horrors from beyond, where time and death held no sway. And in the dark, something waited, patient and hungry, for the next soul to claim. The village below never spoke of Blackthorn Manor again, but fear lingered. Homes locked tight at night, windows barred. Yet, whispers persisted, carried on the wind, telling of other break-ins. A farmer found his barn door open, hoofprints leading to nowhere. A seamstress woke to her needles dancing on their own, stitching patterns of stars she'd never seen. Each tale grew darker, more disturbing, as if the manor's fall had unleashed something older, vaster, that no lock could hold. Alina, if she lived, became a ghost in her own right. Some claimed to see her in distant towns, always at dusk, her eyes haunted but fierce. Others said she'd joined the eternal night, her soul bound to the horrors she fought. But one truth remained: Blackthorn Manor was gone, yet its shadows stretched far, breaking into the world with every storm, every whisper, every crack in the dark. And so the moors stayed silent, but never empty, waiting for the next to face the eternal. Story 3: The Apartment Invader. From the depths in the heart of a bustling city, where neon lights flickered and horns blared into the night, Tom Carver lived in a cramped apartment on the 10th floor of a concrete tower. He was a young man, barely 30, with tired eyes from late shifts at a diner and a heart still bruised from a love lost years ago. His apartment was small, a single room with a sagging couch, a kitchenette that smelled of grease, and a window offering a view of more gray buildings. The city never slept, but Tom craved quiet, locking his door each night against the chaos outside. Yet, something older than the city, something from depths unknown, had other plans. It was a humid summer night, the air thick and heavy, when Tom came home past midnight. His keys jingled as he turned the lock, the door creaking open to a dark room. He flicked on the light, expecting the familiar cluttered dishes in the sink, laundry piled high. But the door was slightly ajar, not fully latched as he'd left it. He froze, keys still in hand. "Hello," he called, voice swallowed by the hum of the city outside. No answer, just the drip of a leaky faucet. Tom stepped inside, heart picking up speed. He'd heard of break-ins, thieves snatching TVs or wallets, but his place had nothing worth stealing. He checked the lock. It wasn't broken. Maybe he'd forgotten to shut it properly. Shaking off the unease, he dropped his bag and headed to the kitchenette, flipping on another light. The room looked normal, but the air felt wrong. Heavy with a smell he couldn't place, wet, salty, like the sea but fouler, like something rotting beneath waves. He grabbed a baseball bat from beside the couch, a holdover from his high school, dazed, and moved toward the bathroom, the only other space in the apartment. The door was closed, though he swore he'd left it open. Pushing it slowly, bat raised, he peered inside. Empty. The shower curtain hung still, the sink dry, but the drain in the floor gurgled, a low, wet sound, like something choking. Tom backed away, pulse hammering. Just the pipes, he muttered, but doubt nodded him back in the main room. He sat on the couch, bat across his lap, eyes darting to the door. The city's noise, cars, shouts, distant sirens, felt far away, muffled by a silence that pressed against his ears. Then, a sound, a slither, soft but unmistakable, like wet rope dragging across tile. It came from the kitchenette behind the counter. Tom stood, bat tight in his grip, and crept forward. "Who's there?" he shouted, voice cracking. The light flickered, just once, casting long shadows. In the corner, where the counter met the wall, something moved. Not a person, not an animal, something else. It was low to the ground, a mass of glistening black, like oil given form. It pulsed, expanding and contracting, and then it rose, taking shape. Tall, too tall for the low ceiling. Its body was a writhing mess of tendrils, slick and gleaming. 2 eyes, green as poison, glowed in a face that wasn't a face. No mouth, no nose, just those eyes, staring through him. Tom stumbled back, bat slipping from his hands. "What are you?" he gasped. The thing didn't speak, but a sound filled his mind, a whisper, deep and ancient, like waves crashing in a place no light touched. "We rise," it said, not in words, but in thoughts that burned. "We break in from below." He ran for the door, but the thing moved faster, sliding across the floor without touching it. Tendrils lashed out, wrapping his ankle, cold as ice, and slick with slime. He fell, kicking wildly, and scrambled to the window, 10 stories above the street. The city sparkled below, unaware of the horror in his room. He fumbled with the latch, but the tendrils tightened, pulling him back. The bat lay nearby. He grabbed it, swinging hard. It struck the creature, sinking into its form like hitting mud. The thing shuddered, but didn't stop, its eyes glowing brighter. The whispers grew louder, filling his head with visions, depths beneath the city, where sewers twisted into caverns older than man. There, in black waters, things slept. There, bodies vast and formless, older than stone. They hungered, not for flesh but for fear, for the spark of life that humans carried. They broke into the world through cracks, drains, pipes, forgotten places, slipping into homes like shadows, stealing what no lock could protect. Tom swung again, breaking free, and crawled to the door. He yanked it open, but the hall was no longer his hall. It stretched endlessly, walls dripping with the same black slime, lit by a sickly green glow. The thing followed, slow and deliberate, its form shifting, now a man with no face, now a mass of claws, now a wave of darkness. "You cannot flee the deep," it whispered, voice echoing in his bones. He ran, feet slipping on the slick floor. The hall twisted, doors appearing where none should be. He opened one, hoping for escape, but found only a void star swirling in a sea of black, with shapes moving within, vast and hungry. He slammed it shut, heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. The creature was closer now, its tendrils brushing his back, each touch burning with cold. Tom's mind raced. He remembered stories from his grandfather, a sailor who spoke of sea monsters, of things that crawled from the ocean's depths to claim the unwary. "They come when you're alone," he'd said, voice low over whiskey. "They break in where the world is weak." Tom had laughed then, a boy who thought monsters were just tales. Now, he wished he'd listened. He reached the elevator, slamming the button. The doors opened, but instead of a metal box, there was a tunnel, sloping down into darkness. Water dripped, echoing like laughter. The creature's whispers grew promises of knowledge, of seeing the truth of the deep. "Join us," they said. "No, the abyss." Tom backed away, but the hall behind him was gone, replaced by more tunnels. All leading down, he ran into the tunnel, no choice left. The walls pulsed, alive, covered in eyes that blinked and stared. The air was thick, hard to breathe, smelling of salt and rot. His bat was useless, dragging behind him. The creature followed, its form filling the tunnel, tendrils scraping stone. Tom's legs burned, but he pushed on, deeper and deeper, until the tunnel opened into a cavern. It was vast, impossible beneath the city. Black water lapped at jagged rocks, and above, a ceiling of glowing crystals cast an eerie light. In the center, on a throne of coral and bone, sat a figure human-shaped but wrong, its body a mass of writhing limbs, its face a mirror of Tom's own, twisted in terror. "You called us," it said, voice his own but deeper, layered with countless others. "Your loneliness opened the way." Tom shook his head, tears streaming. "I didn't call anything," but doubt crept in. His nights alone, his days lost in routine. Had he wished for something more? Something to break the monotony? Had that wish torn a hole in the world? The creature from his apartment emerged behind him, merging with the throne figure. They spoke, as one. "We break in where hearts are empty. We feed on what you hide." Tendrils lashed out, wrapping his arms, his chest. He fought, screaming, but the cold sank into him, pulling memories, his mother's smile, his first kiss, his grandfather's stories draining them like water through a sieve. He fell to his knees, vision blurring. The cavern shook, rocks falling, water rising. The city above was unaware, its light still blinking, its people sleeping. Tom's screams echoed, but no one heard. The creatures dragged him into the water, its surface closing over him like a lid. Darkness took him, filled with whispers of the deep, promising eternal company in exchange for his soul. Morning came, and the apartment stood empty. Neighbors noticed a smell, foul and briny, seeping from Tom's door. The landlord broke in, finding only slime trails across the floor, leading to the drain. No sign of Tom, no sign of struggle. The bat lay in a corner, coated in black muck. Police came, shook their heads, and marked it a missing person case. But the city felt it. Drains gurgled in other buildings. Shadows moved in corners. A woman, on the 5th floor, woke to wet footprints in her hall. A man in the suburbs found his basement flooded, not with water, but with something thicker, alive. Whispers spread, not of thieves, but of things from below, breaking into lives through cracks in the world. Tom's fate became a story, told in bars and back rooms. Some said he'd drowned in a sewer, others that he'd been taken by something older than the city, something that waited in the dark. Kids dared each other to peer into drains, giggling until they heard a slither, a whisper, calling their names. One night, a janitor in Tom's building mopped the 10th floor. He heard a gurgle from the bathroom, saw green eyes in the drain. He ran, quitting the next day. The building was sold, then abandoned, but lights flickered in Tom's old window. Though no one lived there, the city grew quieter at night. Locks checked twice, drains sealed, but the deep never slept. It waited, patient, breaking in through the smallest gaps, hungry for the next lonely soul. And in the depths, Tom, or what was left of him, drifted, his eyes glowing green, his voice joining the whispers, calling to the world above. Story for the cabin in the woods, secret deep in the heart of an ancient forest, where trees twisted like gnarled fingers and the air carried a chill no summer could warm, stood a lonesome cabin. It was a rough-hewn thing, its logs weathered by time, its windows cloudy with age. Mark and his friends Leela, Jake, and Sarah had found it online, a cheap rental for a weekend escape from the city's grind. They were young, barely out of college, craving adventure and laughter under the stars. They packed beer, a guitar, and stories to share. Unaware of this secret, the cabin held a secret that broke into the world when the night grew deep. The drive was long, the road a winding dirt path swallowed by pines. The sun was setting when they arrived, painting the sky blood-red. Mark, the group's leader, tall and brash, with a grin that charmed, hauled their bags inside. Lila, quiet and sharp-eyed, noticed the cabin's eerie stillness first. "It's too quiet," she said, brushing her dark hair back. Jake, broad-shouldered and always joking, laughed it off. "No traffic, no silence. Perfect." Sarah, the dreamer with a sketchbook always in hand, was already sketching the cabin's crooked chimney, lost in her art. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp wood and something sour, like old earth. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, its hearth cold and black. Dusty furniture, sagging couch, a scarred table sat under flickering lights. The walls held faded photos of stern-faced people, their eyes seeming to follow the group. "Creepy," Sarah whispered, but Mark slung an arm around her. "Just old-timey vibes. Let's get a fire going." They unpacked, cracked open beers, and soon laughter filled the cabin. Jake strummed the guitar, off-key but loud, while Leela told ghost stories, her voice low and teasing. Outside, the forest pressed close, branches scraping the windows like fingers. Night fell fast, the darkness thick, unbroken by city lights. The group didn't notice the air growing heavier, the fire dimming despite fresh logs. Past midnight, as the group roasted marshmallows, a knock came at the door, 3 slow, heavy thumps. They froze, smiles fading. "Who's out here?" Mark said, standing. The cabin was miles from anything, the road empty when they arrived. Jake, still holding the guitar, set it down. "Probably a branch," he said, but his voice wavered. Sarah clutched her sketchbook, pencil trembling. Mark strode to the door, bold as ever, and yanked it open. A man stood there, tall and thin, his face pale under a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes were wild, darting like a trapped animal's. "Let me in," he begged, voice hoarse. "They're coming." His clothes were torn, stained with mador, something darker. Leela stepped forward, cautious. "Who's coming? Are you hurt?" The man's gaze flicked past her, to the shadows beyond the firelight. "They're not people," he whispered. "Please, I can't stay out here." Mark hesitated, but Sarah's soft heart won out. "Let him in," she said. "He's scared." Against his gut, Mark stepped aside, and the man stumbled inside, collapsing on the couch. The door slammed shut behind him, though no one touched it. The stranger's name was Ilias, he said, a hiker who'd lost his way. His hand shook as he spoke, eyes never settling. "I saw them in the woods," he muttered. "They come at night, through the trees. They break in." Jake snorted. "Bears, wolves." Elias shook his head, lips trembling. "Not animals. Not from here." The group exchanged glances, unease creeping in. Lila pressed him. "What do you mean, not from here?" Elias looked up, and for a moment, his eyes glowed not with light, but with something else, like stars trapped in glass. "From up there," he said, pointing to the ceiling, to the sky beyond. "They come when it's dark. When you're alone, they take everything." Sarah shivered, pulling her sweater tight. Mark tried to laugh, but it sounded forced. "You're freaking us out, man. Let's just..." Before he could finish, the fire flared, then died, plunging the room into shadow. The lights flickered, bulbs popping one by one. Darkness swallowed the cabin, save for the faint glow of Ilias's eyes. Then, his form changed. His skin shimmered, peeling away to reveal not flesh, but light blinding, cold, like a star's heart. His body stretched, limbs elongating, fingers becoming claws of shimmering void. "I tried to warn you," he said, but his voice was no longer human. It echoed with 1,000 others. deep and vast, like a choir from the cosmos. They used me to break in, Lila screamed, scrambling back. Jake grabbed a poker from the fireplace, swinging wildly. The thing that was Elias dodged, moving like liquid, its form shifting a man, a beast, a swirl of stars. Sarah dropped her sketchbook, pages fluttering open to reveal drawings she hadn't made, spirals, eyes, endless voids. Mark shouted, "Get to the car!" But the door wouldn't budge, the lock jammed, the wood pulsing under his hands. The creature spoke, its voice in their minds, not their ears. "We feed on what you hide," it said. "Your fears, your secrets. We break into your souls." Tendrils of light shot from its body, wrapping around Jake first. He froze, eyes wide, as memories spilled out his father's anger, his own shame, moments he'd buried deep. He screamed, clawing at his head, then collapsed, eyes blank. Lila grabbed Sarah, pulling her toward the back door. Mark swung a chair at the creature, wood splintering against its form. It laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and the room shook. The walls bled shadows, thick and alive, crawling toward them. "You invited us," the creature said. "Your laughter, your joy, it called us from the stars." Sarah sobbed, tripping over her sketchbook. The pages now showed the cabin, the group, and a sky filled with eyes. "I didn't draw this," she cried. Lila dragged her up, but the back door was gone, replaced by a wall of black stone, carved with symbols that burned. To look at, the air grew cold, the smell of ozone and decay choking them. Mark fought on, fists useless against the creature. It touched his shoulder, and visions flooded him, galaxies spinning, planets crumbling, beings vast as mountains watching from the dark. They whispered of eternal hunger, breaking into worlds like thieves, stealing not gold, but lives. Mark fell, gasping, his courage drained, leaving only fear. Lila, sharp and fierce, grabbed a knife from the kitchen. "Leave us alone," she shouted, slashing. The blade passed through, but the creature flinched, its light dimming. "You cannot stop the breach," it said, but its voice wavered. Lila's defiance sparked something in Sarah, who stopped crying and stood. "This is our place," Sarah said, voice trembling but firm. "Get out." The creature lunged, but the cabin shook, timbers groaning. The floor cracked, light pouring up from below, not warm, but cold, like the glow of dead stars. The shadows on the walls screamed, merging with the creature, its form growing unstable. "We will return," it hissed, then exploded into light, blinding them. When their vision cleared, the cabin was dark, the fire out, the air still. Elias was gone, if he'd ever been real. Jake lay on the floor, breathing but staring at nothing. The door was open, the forest silent beyond. Lila helped Sarah up, and they dragged Jake outside, Mark stumbling behind. The car started, thank God, and they sped away, tires kicking up dirt. Dawn broke as they reached the highway, the cabin, a speck in the rear view. They didn't speak, each haunted by what they'd seen. Jake woke hours later, but he wasn't the same quiet, his jokes gone, his eyes searching the sky. Sarah burned her sketchbook, but the images lingered in her dreams. Mark drank to forget, but the visions clung, sharp and cold. Lila, alone, spoke of it, whispering to herself, piecing together the horror. The cabin stood empty after that, or so the locals said, but hikers reported strange lights in the woods, footsteps with no source. A ranger found the cabin's door open, the inside untouched, but for a single photo on the wall, Mark, Lila, Jake, and Sarah, smiling, with eyes that glowed like stars. He burned the photo, but the image stayed in his mind. The forest grew darker, the air heavier. Other cabins nearby reported break-ins, not of goods, but of minds. A family woke to their walls covered in symbols, their children whispering of star people. A lone camper vanished, his tent filled with ash. The town nearby locked its doors at night, but locks meant nothing to what came from above. Mark and his friends tried to move on, but the secret followed. Leela saw shadows in her apartment, heard whispers in the wind. Sarah's new sketches bled with ink she didn't use, forming spirals and voids. Jake stared at the night sky, muttering about them watching. Mark felt it most, a pull to return, to face the thing they'd escaped or hadn't. One night, a year later, Lila drove back alone. She stood before the cabin, knife in hand, heart pounding. The door was open, light spilling out cold, endless. She stepped inside, and the forest swallowed her scream. The cabin burned that night, flames reaching the sky, but the stars above pulsed, alive and hungry. The secret lived on, breaking into other lives, other nights, a cosmic horror that needed no key, only a crack in the heart to slip through. Story 5: The Haunted Farmhouse Breach in the rolling hills of a forgotten valley, where wheat swayed like whispers and the wind carried moans from the earth, stood the old Grayson farmhouse. It was a sagging relic of wood and stone, its paint peeled to gray, its windmill creaking under a sky that never seemed to clear. The Grayson family, Jean, Mary, and their 2 children. Ellie and Ben had moved in a year ago, seeking a quiet life after city bustle. John was a sturdy man, hands calloused from fixing fences. Mary, kind but weary, kept the house warm with baking. Ellie, 12, loved stories of ghosts. Ben, 8, chased fireflies with boundless joy. They didn't know the farmhouse held a secret, one that broke through walls, not with force, but with shadows from a place older than time. It was autumn, the air sharp with frost, when the first signs came. The family sat at supper, lamplight flickering on plates of stew, when a thud echoed from the cellar. John paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. "What was that?" Ellie asked, eyes wide with excitement. Mary frowned. "Just the house settling, love." But Ben shivered, clutching his fork. The thud came again, heavier, like something dragging across stone. John stood, wiping his hands. "I'll check," he said, grabbing a lantern from the hook. The cellar door was under the kitchen, its wood warped and heavy. John descended creaky stairs, the air growing cold and damp, smelling of earth and something sour, like spoiled milk. The lantern cast shadows on barrels and crates, relics left by farmers long gone. Nothing moved, but the silence felt alive, watching. He checked the corners, found only cobwebs, and climbed back up. "Nothing there," he said, forcing a smile. But Ellie whispered, it sounded like footsteps. That night, as the family slept, the farmhouse groaned. Ellie woke, first hearing scratches at her window. She peered out, expecting branches, but saw only darkness thick moving, like ink swirling in water. She ran to her parents' room, shaking Mary awake. "Something's outside," she whispered. Mary hushed her, but John sat up, hearing it. To a low rattle, like chains dragging across the porch. He grabbed his rifle, a hunter's tool, and crept to the front door. It was locked, as always, but the handle twitched, as if testing. He flung the door open, rifle ready. The porch was empty, the windmills spinning slow under a moonless sky. But the air was wrung heavy, with a smell of rot, like something dead, buried shallow. "Go back to bed," he told Ellie, who hovered behind him. She obeyed, but her dreams were of shadows with eyes, whispering her name. Morning brought unease. Mary found the cellar door ajar, though John swore he'd locked it. Ben refused to play outside, saying the windmill's shadow moved funny. Ellie, braver, explored the barn, finding old tools etched with strange symbol swirls and stars that hurt to look at. She showed them to John, who brushed it off as old farmer nonsense, but his eyes lingered, uneasy. The next night, the noises grew. Thuds from the cellar, scratches on walls, and a low hum, like voices chanting far away. John checked the cellar again, finding nothing but a cold that sank into his bones. Mary lit candles, praying softly, while Ellie read her ghost stories, half thrilled, half scared. Ben hid under his blanket, whispering, "They're coming." At midnight, the house shook a deep rumble, like the earth waking. The family gathered in the kitchen, candles flickering wildly. The cellar door slammed open, a gust of icy air rushing up. John aimed his rifle down the stairs, shouting, "Who's there?" No answer, but footsteps came slow, heavy, with a clank of metal, like chains dragging. Mary clutched the children, her prayers faltering. From the darkness emerged figures, not human, but shaped like them, cloaked in shadows that dripped like tar. Their faces were hidden, but eyes glowed red, like embers in a dying fire. Chains hung from their forms, rattling with each step, etched with the same symbols Ellie had found. "We break through," they rasped, voices layered, ancient, carrying the weight of centuries. "This house is ours." John fired, the shot echoing, but the bullet passed through, hitting the cellar wall. The figures glided closer, untouched. Mary screamed, pushing Ellie and Ben behind her. "What do you want?" she cried. The figures paused, heads tilting. "Your warmth," they said. "Your light." "We take what was promised." Ellie, trembling but curious, whispered, "Promised by who?" The figures turned to her, their eyes boring into hers. Visions flooded her mind, Gothic spires rising from a void, graves opening under starlight, and a pact made long ago by the first farmer who built this house. He'd called them, these specters, trading his soul for fertile fields, not knowing they'd return, breaking in to claim more. The family ran, John leading them to the living room. He barred the door with a chair, but the figures seeped through, shadows curling under the frame like smoke. Mary grabbed a poker from the fireplace, swinging wildly, but it passed through them. Ben sobbed, "Make them go away." Ellie, clutching her book, shouted, "They're ghosts. Fire hurts ghosts." She threw a candle at the nearest figure, its flame catching the shadow's edge. It screamed, a sound like metal on stone, and recoiled, its form flickering. John seized the idea, grabbing more candles. "Light them all," he yelled. Mary and Ellie lit every wick, the room blazing with firelight. The figures hissed, retreating to the walls, but the chains rattled louder, the house shaking harder. Cracks spread across the ceiling, dust falling like snow. The specters spoke again, their voices in the family's minds. "You cannot burn the eternal. We break in always." The floor buckled, boards snapping. From the cracks rose more shadows, thinner, faster, with claws like rusted iron. They lunged, one grabbing Ben's arm. His scream pierced the air as cold spread through him, his eyes glazing over. Mary yanked him free, but his arm was marked, black veins spreading like roots. "Fight them," John roared, tossing a burning log. It hit a figure, sparks flying, and the shadow dissolved into ash, but more came. Endless. Ellie remembered a story from her book, a tale of banishing spirits with will, not just fire. "We have to say no," she shouted. "Tell them they don't belong." The family stood together, voices shaking but loud, chanting, "This is our home, leave us." The figures paused, their glow dimming, but the house groaned, walls bleeding black ooze. The cellar door burst wide, a vortex of darkness swirling within. The figures turned, drawn to it, their chains dragging. The pact calls, they hissed, stepping into the void. But one lingered, its eyes on Ellie. "You see us," it said. "You'll call us back." It vanished, the vortex closing, leaving silence. The family collapsed, panting, the house still. Dawn broke, light streaming through cracked windows. They packed what they could, fleeing in their truck. The farmhouse stood silent, its windmill still, but the valley felt alive, watching. They never returned. The farmhouse was abandoned, its fields withering. Locals whispered of lights in the windows, chains rattling at night. A hunter found the cellar door open, symbols carved into every step, glowing faintly. He ran, never speaking of it. The tried to forget, but the breach followed. Ben's mark never faded, his dreams filled with red eyes. Ellie saw shadows in every corner, her stories now warnings. Mary prayed daily, but her candles flickered with no wind. John checked locks obsessively, hearing thuds in the night. Years later, a drifter stayed in the farmhouse, drawn by its quiet. He woke to chains dragging, shadows breaking through walls. His screams echoed, then stopped. The valley swallowed the sound, as it always did. The farmhouse stood, a gate to something older, waiting for the next to call it forth, breaking into the world with whispers and chains. Story 6, The Stellar Thiefin, a quiet suburb where streetlights buzzed and lawns stayed neatly trimmed. A small house glowed under the moon's pale gaze. It belonged to Daniel Reed, a lonely man in his late 30s, a librarian who lived for books and the quiet of his routine. His home was modest, with faded wallpaper and shelves overflowing with novels, their pages worn from years of reading. Daniel was a man of habit, locking his doors each night, checking windows twice, finding comfort in the predictable. But the stars above held a secret, one that broke into his life, not with a crash, but with a whisper, stealing what no lock could guard. It was a crisp autumn night, the air sharp with the promise of winter, when Daniel came home from the library. The streets were silent, the suburb wrapped in sleep. He turned his key, the door clicking open, and stepped inside. The house was dark, save for the soft glow of a lamp he always left on. But something felt off. The air was too still, heavy with a faint hum, like a distant machine. He set his bag down, frowning, and checked the front door. Locked, as always. Yet, a chill ran through him, as if eyes watched from the shadows. He shook it off, blaming a long day, and headed to his bedroom. The window there was open, just a crack, letting in a breeze that smelled of ozone, sharp and strange. Daniel froze. He never left windows open to many stories of break-ins, though his suburb was safe. He pushed it shut, the latch sticking, before it clicked. "Just the wind," he muttered, but his voice trembled. He glanced outside, expecting the usual view of his neighbor's fence. Instead, the sky seemed wrong, stars too bright, pulsing like heartbeats. Arranged in patterns he didn't recognize, Daniel went to bed, pulling the covers tight, but sleep wouldn't come. The hum grew louder, seeping into his dreams. He saw a vast void, stars swirling in spirals, and shapes moving within, tall, thin, with limbs like light bent into claws. They whispered his name, their voices soft but endless, promising secrets if he'd only listen. He woke with a start, sweat soaking his shirt, the clock reading 3 a.m. The house was silent, but the window was open again, wider now, the curtains fluttering, heart pounding. He grabbed a flashlight and checked the house. The living room was untouched, books neatly shelved. The kitchen was empty, dishes stacked. But in the hallway, a mirror reflected something wrong. Not his face, but a shimmer, like heat rising from pavement. He blinked, and it was gone, just his tired eyes staring back. Still, the hum persisted, now a low chant, words he couldn't grasp but felt in his bones. He sat on the couch, flashlight in hand, telling himself it was nothing. But then, a soft scrape, like fingers on glass. It came from the bedroom. Daniel crept back, flashlight beam shaking. The window was shut now, but on the sill lay something new. A small, smooth stone, black as night, etched with a symbol like a star, with too many points. He reached for it, then stopped, his hand tingling as if the air around it burned with cold. The hum became words, faint but clear. "We see you, Daniel. We take what you hide." He spun, flashlight sweeping the room, empty, but the shadows moved, curling at the edges, forming shapes, tall, fluid, with eyes like twin stars. One stepped forward, its body a mix of light and void, a Gothic silhouette against the mundane walls. "You called us," it said, voice in his mind, sharp as a blade. "Your loneliness opened the door." Daniel backed away, heart racing. "I didn't call anything," he shouted, but doubt crept in. His nights alone, reading of distant worlds, dreaming of something more. Had he wished for this? The figure glided closer, its form shifted. Man, then a beast, then a swirl of stars. "We break in where hearts are empty," it said. "We steal the spark." He ran to the front door, fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't turn, the metal cold as ice. The figure followed, slow and deliberate, its eyes burning into him. Visions flooded his mind, cosmic seas of light, planets crumbling into dust, beings vast as galaxies feeding on human fears. They broke into worlds through cracks in reality, slipping into homes like his, taking not gold but dreams, memories, the essence of life. Daniel stumbled to the kitchen, grabbing a knife. "Stay back," he yelled, slashing the air. The figure laughed, a sound like breaking stars, and the knife flew from his hand, clattering against the wall. The shadows thickened, more figures emerging, their forms Gothic and terrible capes of night, claws of light, faces that were mirrors of his own, twisted in pain. "You cannot keep us out," they chanted, voices blending into a chorus of dread. He scrambled to the living room, knocking over books. One fell open, an old tome about constellations, its pages now glowing with the same star-like symbol. The figures paused, their eyes on the book. Daniel seized it, tearing pages, but they burned his hands, turning to ash that floated upward, forming new stars in the ceiling. The room shook, walls cracking, light pouring through not sunlight, but something cold, alien, from a place no map could chart. The lead figure touched his shoulder, and memories spilled out his mother's lullabies, his first day at the library, the girl he'd loved and lost. Each one faded, leaving holes in his mind. He screamed, falling to his knees, the flashlight rolling away. The figures circled, their whispers growing. "Join us in the eternal. Know the truth of the stars." Daniel fought, clawing at his head, trying to hold on to who he was. The house groaned, windows shattering. Outside, the suburbs slept, unaware. The figures tightened their grip, pulling him toward a void opening in the floor, a portal of swirling light, showing spires of crystal and seas of shadow. "We break in always," they said, their voices now his own, mocking. Daniel's scream was cut short as the void swallowed him, the house falling silent. Morning came, and the house stood empty. A neighbor noticed the open window, the strange glow gone. Police found no sign of Daniel, only the black stone on the sill, its symbol pulsing faintly. They took it as evidence, but it vanished from the station, leaving only ash. The house was cleaned, sold, but the new owners didn't stay long. They spoke of dreams stolen, of waking to find their thoughts scattered, their joys dimmed. The suburb changed. Lights flickered at night, locks failed. A child found a stone like Daniel's in her yard, and her laughter stopped. An old man saw stars move in ways they shouldn't, forming eyes that watched him sleep. Whispers spread, not of thieves, but of something worse, stellar thieves, breaking into lives through the cracks of loneliness. Taking what made people whole, Daniel's fate became a cautionary tale, told in hushed tones. Some said he'd run off, others that he'd been taken by the stars. The library where he worked felt empty, its books heavier, as if holding secrets too vast to read. A janitor swore he saw Daniel's face in a mirror, eyes glowing, mouthing words with no sound. One night, a year later, a girl renting Daniel's old house woke to a hum. She found the window open, a stone on the sill. She threw it out, locked. Everything but the hum grew, and shadows moved. She fled, never returning. The house was boarded up, but lights glowed inside, and neighbors heard whispers, calling names in the night. the stellar thief never stopped. It broke into other homes, other lives, slipping through the smallest gaps, open windows, lonely hearts, forgotten dreams. The suburb grew quiet, doors barred, but the stars above pulsed, watching, waiting for the next to call them down. And in the void, Daniel drifted, his eyes glowing like stars, his voice a whisper in the cosmic dark, forever bound to the thief that stole him. Story 7. Gothic Tower Intrusion. In a jagged cliff overlooking a restless sea, where waves crashed like the screams of the damned and the wind wailed through rocky crevices, stood the Black Spire Tower. It was a Gothic relic, its stone walls blackened by salt and time, its single spire piercing the storm clouds like a needle through flesh. Elias Kane, a weathered lighthouse keeper in his 50s, lived alone in this forsaken place, tending the beacon that warned ships from the jagged rocks. Below, his face was lined with years of solitude, his eyes sharp from watching the horizon, his heart heavy with memories of a family lost to the sea. The tower was his refuge, its thick walls and iron locks a shield against the world. But something, older than the ocean, hungrier than the storms, waited in the dark, ready to break in with whispers and dread. It was a stormy night in late October, the sky a churning mass of black clouds, lightning splitting the air. Elias sat in his small room at the tower's base, a fire crackling in the hearth, a tattered book of sea tales open on his lap. The beacon above hummed, its light cutting through the tempest, guiding ships he'd never see. He was used to storms, their rage a comfort in his lonely life. But tonight, the air felt wrong, thick, heavy with a smell like wet iron, as if the sea itself bled. The wind carried voices, faint and garbled, like drowned men calling from below. A knock came at the tower's iron door, 3 slow, deliberate thumps. Elias froze, book slipping to the floor. No one came here, not in a storm, not ever. The nearest village was miles away, the cliff path treacherous even in daylight. He grabbed his lantern, its flame flickering, and climbed the spiral stairs to the watchroom, peering through a narrow window. The cliff was empty, waves pounding below, but the knock came again, louder, shaking the door's hinges. "Who's out there?" Elias shouted, voice rough from disuse. No answer, only the howl of the storm. He descended, gripping a heavy wrench, his only weapon. The door was bolted, as always, but the handle rattled, as if pushed by unseen hands. He hesitated, heart pounding, then unbolted the door and yanked it open. Rain lashed his face, but the threshold was empty, the cliff path swallowed by darkness. Yet, the air pulsed, alive with a presence he couldn't see. He slammed the door, bolting it twice, and returned to his fire. The tower groaned, stones shifting as if uneasy. The voices grew clearer, whispering his name. "Elias, we know you." They came from the walls, the floor, the sea itself. He shook his head, muttering, "Just the storm," but fear clawed at him. He climbed to the beacon room, checking the light. Story 8. The Void's final break-in. A crumbling village at the edge of a desolate plain, where dust swirled like ghosts and the stars burned cold, stood the last house on Willow Lane. It was a squat, weathered thing, its shingles loose, its windows clouded with grime. Margaret Hale, a widow in her 60s, lived there alone, her days filled with gardening and her nights with memories of a life long faded. Her hands were rough from years of toil, her eyes sharp with defiance, but her heart carried a quiet ache for her lost husband and son. The village was nearly empty now. Its people fled after whispers of break-ins, not by thieves, but by something that slipped through locked doors, stealing more than gold. Margaret barred her windows, bolted her doors, and prayed each night. But the void was coming, and it needed no key. It was a moonless night in late fall, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and something sharper, like burnt metal. Margaret sat by her fireplace, knitting a scarf she'd never finish, the crackle of logs her only company. The village was silent, its few remaining souls hidden behind locked doors. She'd heard the stories, houses found empty, locks untouched, only shadows and whispers left behind. The old church spoke of demons, the tavern of ghosts. But Margaret, a woman of faith and grit, trusted her bolts and her Bible. Still, the air felt heavy, as if the night itself watched her. A thud came from the attic, soft but deliberate, like a footstep on old wood. Margaret's needles paused, her breath catching. The attic was locked, filled with boxes of her husband's things, letters, tools, a life packed away. She set her knitting down, grabbing a lantern and a poker from the hearth. "Just rats," she muttered, but her voice shook. She climbed the narrow stairs, the lantern's flame dancing, casting shadows that moved too freely. The attic door was shut, the lock firm. She turned the key, heart pounding, and pushed it open. Dust swirled in the dim light, boxes stacked high, but the air was wrong, cold, sharp, smelling of ozone and decay. A shadow shifted in the corner, tall and thin, its edges blurring like smoke. "Who's there?" Margaret demanded, poker raised. No answer, but the shadow grew, forming eyes red as embers, glowing in a face that wasn't there. She backed away, slamming the door, but the lock wouldn't catch. The shadow seeped through, not through the door, but the walls. Its form twisting now, a man in a tattered cloak, now a beast with claws of light, now a void with stars swirling inside. "We break in," it whispered, its voice a chorus of screams, ancient and vast. "We take all." Margaret stumbled down the stairs, the poker slipping from her hand. The house groaned, as if waking, the walls pulsing with a heartbeat not her own. She reached the living room, barring the door with a chair, but the shadow followed, gliding through wood like water. More came, emerging from cracks in the floor, the ceiling, the windows, figures of shadow and light, their bodies Gothic and terrible, with wings like torn sails and fangs glinting like stars. Their eyes were everywhere, red and unblinking, watching her soul. "You called us," they said, voices in her mind, sharp as knives. Your pain opened the door. Margaret clutched her Bible, shouting, "I called nothing." But memories stirred, nights weeping for her husband, her son, both lost to illness, their absence, a hole in her heart. Had her grief torn the world, inviting this horror? She lit every candle, their flames weak against the dark. The figures circled, their forms shifting her husband's face, then her son's, then faceless voids, each a mockery of her loss. "We are the eternal," they chanted. "We break through time, through flesh." The house shook, windows cracking, glass raining down. Margaret ran to the kitchen, grabbing a knife, but it felt useless against the tide of shadows. The air grew colder, the smell of decay stronger, as if the void itself breathed. A crack split the floor, light pouring up, not warm, but cold, like the glow of dead stars. From it came more figures, their claws scraping, their wings rustling like dry leaves. They spoke of a cosmic debt, a pact made by the village's founders, who'd offered their souls to unseen gods for prosperity. The debt was due, and the void had come to collect. Margaret's prayers faltered, her voice drowned by their whispers. They showed her visions, galaxies burning, spires of bone rising from ash, a throne where a shadowed king sat, its eyes her own, twisted in despair. "Join us," they said, their touch like ice, burning her skin. She swung the knife, but it passed through, the figures laughing, a sound like breaking worlds. Her memories spilled, her husband's smile, her son's, laughter fading like smoke. She screamed, clutching her head, fighting to hold them. The front door rattled, bolts bending. Margaret ran to it, hoping to flee, but beyond was no village, only a void, stars swirling in a sea of black, faces of the lost staring up. Her husband was there, his eyes red, his mouth open in a silent cry. "You left us," he said, voice not his, but theirs. She slammed the door, heartbreaking, and turned to find the figures closer, their claws reaching. She fled to the attic, the only place left, barring the door with boxes. The shadows followed, seeping through cracks, their eyes filling the room. The lantern flickered out, leaving only their glow. Margaret fell to her knees, Bible open, reading verses aloud, but the words twisted, becoming their chant. "We break in always." The attic shook, beams splitting, dust choking the air. A portal opened in the ceiling, a tear in reality. Swirling with colors, no, I should see blues deeper than oceans. Reds like blood on fire. The figures lunged, claws sinking into her arms, pulling her toward the portal. She fought, kicking, screaming, her will aflame against their cold. "This is my home," she roared, grabbing a box, her husband's tools, and throwing it. The box burst, scattering nails and hammers, and the figures flinched, their forms flickering. Margaret seized the moment, crawling to the window, smashing it open. Cold air rushed in, but the void outside was closer, its stars pulsing, calling her name. She stood, defiant, clutching a hammer. "You can't have me," she shouted, swinging at the nearest figure. It dissolved into ash, but more came, endless. The portal grew, the house crumbling, walls bleeding black ooze. Margaret's strength waned, her memories fading, her son's first words, her husband's touch, gone. The figures wrapped her in shadow, pulling her toward the void. Her screams echoed, then stopped, swallowed by the eternal dot. Dawn broke, and the house stood silent, doors locked, windows intact. The village was empty, its last souls gone. A traveler found the house days later, its air heavy, smelling of ash and stars. Inside, he found Margaret's Bible, open to a blank page, etched, with a single symbol, a star, with too many points. He burned the book, but the symbol lingered in his mind, whispering. The village became a ghost place, its houses abandoned, its fields barren. Whispers carried on the wind, telling of break-ins from beyond, where locks meant nothing. A child in a nearby town woke to find her window open, a shadow watching. A farmer saw stars move, forming eyes that stared. The void was patient, breaking into lives through cracks in the heart, stealing what made them whole. Margaret's fate became a story, told in fear. Some said she'd fought and lost, others that she'd joined the void, her voice among its whispers. The house on Willow Lane was torn down, but the plain felt alive, watching. Lights glowed where no lamps burned, and shadows moved with no source. One night, a drifter camped on the plain, drawn by the quiet. He woke to a hum, a crack in the air, and eyes in the dark read endless, calling his name. He ran, but the void followed, breaking in where no one could hide, and in the eternal dark, Margaret drifted, her eyes glowing like stars, her voice a whisper in the cosmic night, forever bound to the void's final breach.